Welcome to Heart and Mind Talks, a podcast for female entrepreneurs navigating life and business. I'm Vanessa Ortali, award-winning speaker and coach. Join me and expert guests as we uncover how to make success simpler, more fun, and feel truly aligned to you. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who could use a little extra love and inspiration. Let's go. Hello, friend. How are you? I am so excited for this episode because I'm going to tell you all about getting pregnant, pregnancy, labor, postpartum. I had an unmedicated birth, which is always fun, and I get a lot of questions about it. So I'm going to give you all the tea today. Probably way too much information, but hey, we're going to go with it. I always love hearing people's pregnancy and birth stories. Maybe you will too. If you have had a baby, maybe you can relate, even though I know every single person's pregnancy and delivery is completely different. If you're not pregnant, maybe this will inspire you. I hope this doesn't scare you, but I'm going to be really honest because there's so many things about this process that people just don't talk about. Let's go first with getting pregnant. So for me, this actually started years before I even tried to get pregnant. My body was presenting as estrogen dominance, which means that I was getting really bloated, my boobs were super tender, and I had all these symptoms that I kind of wanted to get sorted, and I knew something wasn't right. And so I went to a naturopath. I got my hormones tested. I did the Dutch test, which I loved. It is a urine test, and you do it over a sequence of, I think it was 3 days. This was years ago now, so I hope I don't get this wrong, and maybe it's changed since then. And then you mail away the samples. And they give you back this really comprehensive test all about your testosterone, your estrogen, your different estrogen pathways, your progesterone. And when I got the test back, it explained so much. It even gave me information about my cortisol levels. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, at the end of the day, I am completely dead. I wake up. My body is more of a morning person. I wake up, I have so much energy, I'm ready to go. And then throughout the day, I just deplete. And at the end of the night, it is just not a good scene. I am so tired. I have zero cortisols at the end of the day. And when I did this hormone test, it actually showed me that that was just how my body responds. And that's why sleep is so important for me. So having this data, having these tests really helped me just to better understand my body, better show up for my body, and then obviously get my hormones in order. And maybe that was a factor in being able to get pregnant, especially as an older mom. So when I did this a couple of years ago and I got the test back, I was presenting as estrogen dominant, but not because I had too much estrogen. It was actually because my progesterone was low. And so I took a couple of supplements at that time. I did a bunch of things, but I also looked at my lifestyle and your progesterone. And let me start off by telling you, obviously, I'm not a medical professional. So take what you want from this conversation. If I make any mistakes, please forgive me. But in the last 2 weeks before your period, so after ovulation, that's when I wanted to be very careful of nurturing my body because that's when the progesterone gets made and is really important to minimize stress on the body so that it doesn't impact progesterone. And in doing so, I started to really look at the stressors on my body, whether it be stress, as in work, but also your workouts, food, all of that sort of thing, even cold plunges, all those things do put stress on the body. So I started to change my workouts during those 2 weeks. I started not to do cold plunges during those 2 weeks. And for me, it made a really big difference in how I felt and my progesterone levels. And just really understanding my body, my cycle, all of these things, I think as women, is so important. It's important for me to understand how my body works so that I can work with it instead of fighting against it. And so that I can show up, especially as an entrepreneur, I need to know how I'm feeling and what I need in order to show up for my family and my clients. So this was a really important part of my life of just understanding my body. And I really believe that it added to my knowledge and connection to my body when getting pregnant. So
let me tell you from a mindset perspective as well. I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted kids. I was kind of on the fence. I felt, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But I think so much of that was finding the right partner. And in my 20s, I actually wanted a baby more than in my 30s. And I think it is connected to the partner thing, but also because in my 20s, I might have wanted a baby for the wrong reasons. I might have wanted a baby because I thought that's what I needed to do, right? It's that conveyor belt that I talked about in my welcome episode, the things that we think we need to do, the marriage, the baby, the job, all those things. And in my 20s, I started questioning everything. And in questioning everything, I started to question, do I really want to be a mom for the right reasons? So later in my 30s, when I finally found the partner for me, and we were at a place in our relationship that we thought it might be a good next step to explore having children, then, from a mindset place, again, I didn't want to put too much pressure on it. We both were in the same boat when we thought, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. And that's the energy that we kind of went into the whole conceiving situation. Other things that I considered when conceiving and prior to. So let's start with prior to. Prior to, I've also been pretty much gluten-free and dairy-free since oh my goodness, my early 20s. So it's been 15, 20 years since I haven't had that. And for me, that caused a lot of inflammation in my body. So there's all these different factors in knowing your body that a lot of people say contribute to getting pregnant. Now, in the poker community, they would call this a free roll, meaning, and my partner plays poker, so you'll hear more about this later, but meaning that if it helps, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So all these things I was doing, I can't say for sure that it helped me to get pregnant, but it couldn't have hurt. So lowering the inflammation, managing my hormones. And then when I actively, and me and my partner actively started deciding, all right, let's kind of go for it. We say we pulled the goalie. It was those things plus a couple extra. So when I met with my naturopath and told her, hey, we're considering having a child, I got on additional supplements. I also started tracking my ovulation. This for me took the longest. Just knowing when I was ovulating and knowing when we would actually get pregnant took me a little bit. So I would say from start to finish, when we said, "Hey, let's pull the goalie to when I actually got pregnant," was probably about a year. And in you hearing that, you might think, "Holy moly, that was a long time." But for me, it really was not. Actually feel like we got pregnant really quickly. And let me explain, because were we actively trying, and I'm doing air quotations when I say trying because I don't even love that word. I never felt like we were trying because I knew the baby would come when the baby would come. So were we actively trying every month? No, we would travel, things would happen, maybe I wasn't in the mood, but I would say the difference was when I really started tracking my ovulation and using ovulation strips. When I started doing that, I think I got pregnant within 2 or 3 months. So for me, it was just the entire journey throughout that year. I didn't put pressure on it. Like I said, I didn't want to say, oh my gosh, I'm ovulating. This has to happen. I wanted it to feel organic. I wanted it to feel easy and fun and kismet, meant to be. A couple other things that I did right before I got pregnant, and maybe this was a factor, maybe it wasn't. I did a yoni steam, and you kind of steam your hoo-ha down there with some herbs. And it's supposed to help make the environment just more moist and more desirable for the implantation to occur. So I did that, but it also feels really great. I love them, even postpartum. They were great. And I also read the book Spirit Babies, which is just such a sweet book about connecting to the spirit of your baby and trusting that it's not just you. Let go of control, just surrender and allow your baby to also know that they get to come in when they are ready. This is a journey between the two of us. I don't need to control this experience because it is just going to be more fun for everyone. And I remember buying a little kids book and going into his room, which was a guest room at the time and now is his nursery. But I went into the room and just read this book out loud and just I really focused on a spiritual level of just connecting with him. Well, I didn't know it was a him at the time, connecting with the spirit and just allowing them to know that we were ready for them whenever they were ready. And I just felt like reading the book out loud and doing little things like that allowed me to connect to the spirit of my child and just welcome them in when they were ready. So that was the conception experience. And I found out really quickly before my miss period that I was pregnant. And this was, I wouldn't say it was a shock, but I actually just kind of felt like I knew. I took the test literally 8 a.m. in the morning. And funny enough, I didn't even tell my partner until 8 p.m. that night. So I had the whole day just to sit in that energy of knowing I was pregnant and it being my little secret. And my partner was working that day. That's why I didn't tell him. And so later that night, I got my cat at the time. My cat's name was Penelope. And I say at the time because she's since passed. She was literally, oh my gosh, she was my everything. That cat, I got the cat when my mom died. And then, even this, it just warms my heart. Oh my gosh, I know you could hear this. And so I got the cat when my mom died, and then as soon as I got pregnant, the cat passed away. And it was almost like, I feel emotional because it was just this transitional moment in knowing that she was passing me on to my child. And I just knew it was perfect. And so I was pregnant when she passed. And I am so grateful that she was there to help me tell my partner that we were pregnant. And so I put this little dress on her and she hated clothes. She just walked like a complete, oh my goodness, she had no idea. She didn't even know where her paws were when I put a dress on her, but this little dress said promoted to big sis. And I showed Mark, my partner, and he looked at the dress and just laughed at the dress. I said, "Well, what does the dress say?" And he said, "Promoted to big sis." Completely blank. He was not getting it. And I said, "Yeah, what does that mean?" He's like, "I don't know." So I actually had to tell him I'm pregnant. And he was shocked. He's like, "What?" I was like, "Well, what do you think's gonna happen?" And so, anyways, it was just such a fun experience. We actually recorded everybody when we told them that we were pregnant, and everybody's responses were so funny. I'm so happy I kept those keepsakes. I would just hide the phone and record it. And they're just such special memories, but nobody got it. Everyone was completely surprised, even though we had told people, hey, we think we're ready for a child. But I guess because we didn't take it very seriously and it was what it was, that people were kind of shocked when it actually happened. And or maybe they just didn't want to get their hopes up either, because we do know that a lot of people have trouble conceiving and not everybody's journey it feels easy and effortless. But so that was our conception journey on to pregnancy. For me, pregnancy was just such a wild, cool experience. I loved being pregnant. I wanted the experience of feeling what it was like to grow a baby. So, first trimester, I would say I was quite gaggy. I felt like I could gag with different smells, and just if you asked me if I was nauseous and I really tuned in, I would feel gaggy, but I didn't really puke that much. I only puked for 1 week, and that I believe was when the placenta was taking over because your blood and your circulation changes. And so for me, I was feeling lightheaded that week and ended up puking that week a couple of times, I think 2 or 3 times, which was, I mean, a rite of passage. It's it's all good. And then moving into second trimester, it felt really great. I mean, a couple things during pregnancy that are really funny. I also grew a bunch of extra moles and freckles that I hadn't had before because your growth hormone increases. So apparently you get extra moles and freckles, and they just kept coming and I didn't know where they were coming from, but my midwife assured me it was completely normal. And so those moles have since gone and fallen off since I have been in postpartum, actually. But it's just so neat because everybody's body responds to this baby differently. I also, because so I'm only 5'4", and I ended up birthing an 8 pound 7 ounces baby.
And I don't know if he was just heavy or I also have a very small torso. He didn't have much room to go around, but I had to work. I felt like I had to work so hard to keep this baby up. My inner thighs were burning almost my entire pregnancy. They were working so hard to keep him up. And upon many people's advice, because yes, I did pee my pants a couple times while pregnant, I went to go see a pelvic floor therapist. And oh my goodness, if you've gone to a pelvic floor therapist, it is just, oh, it is a very interesting experience. They go, literally, you lie on a bed and they just go right in, like hands in you, talking to you. It's just, it is a very interesting experience. For me, I don't know 100% if it was worth it. Would I do it with my next baby? I'm actually not even sure. I appreciated going to a pelvic floor therapist so they could check everything out to make sure everything was good, but I really don't know 100% if it was worth it or if I would go back. Maybe I also just didn't have a great pelvic floor therapist. I know a lot of people have amazing experiences, especially preparing for labor, making sure the muscles are all ready to go, figuring out how to push. And then also, if there's any tension or tightness, just making it an easier birth process.
Towards the end of my pregnancy, I would say the last 3 month to 3 weeks, I just felt huge. I was so swollen. My feet were so big, I couldn't even fit into my shoes. Thank goodness it was summer because I just wore Mark sandals. And it was just such a cool experience trying to grow this child and then hold this baby. He was so heavy towards the end. And I actually worked out through my entire pregnancy. I had a private Pilates instructor, which for me helped me so much to really just continue to connect with my core, hug the baby, hold the baby. And I really do feel as though it helped me in labor and even postpartum. And now I feel strong. I don't have too much loose skin. Obviously, I still have some weight to lose, but I don't have loose skin in my belly. I didn't get stretch marks on my belly. Now, I did put cream. They also say that that could be hereditary. I put cream every day. And, everybody, again, everybody's body is completely different. Now, throughout pregnancy as well, in order to prepare for my birth, I did do a couple courses, mostly hypnobirthing and just understanding the birthing process, knowing the different stages, knowing what to expect because it was my first child. For me, this helped me a lot from a mindset perspective, but also just feeling prepared. And I knew I wanted to have an unmedicated birth, which I will explain in a second. And so I wanted to just really understand my body, the process, and how to move through that without having an epidural. The other thing that it helped, it literally has changed the way that I poo forever. Maybe that's too much information, but just the breathing and connecting with your body. And they always tell you birthing is like taking a poop. And so they'll talk about the different when you feel, and then the difference between feeling like you need to go and then feeling like you're going to go in your pants. Those are different. And two things that I will talk about again when I talk about the labor, but it was so fascinating, these courses. One thing that I didn't prepare for prior to labor was breastfeeding. Would I have at the time? I mean, I actually bought a breastfeeding course and never did it because there's just so much to know. So for me, I just kept taking it one step at a time. What do I really need to know right now? So during my pregnancy, I focused on preparing for baby, connecting to my body, and then preparing for labor. Now, I knew I wanted an unmedicated birth, not to just be this, I did it, I'm unmedicated. For me, it was very important to connect with my body and know how powerful I was as a woman, know that I could do it and overcome the pain. Because when I was doing these hypnobirthing courses, they talk a lot about the connection between fear and pain. And the more fear that you have, the more painful it can become. Because when you're in fear, your whole body tightens. And when you're relaxed, everything relaxes and the pain can subside. It doesn't have to be painful. I also read this book called Orgasmic Birth. I believe that's what it was called, orgasmic birth, I think. And that was really cool. Just the concept that it doesn't have to be painful. What if it could be orgasmic? So throughout my entire labor, and I'm going into there, I did have this process and these different thoughts in mind. And there was no question for me that I didn't want an epidural. I also don't deal well with medication. Every time I've had surgery, I just puke profusely. And like I said, I've spent so many years on mindset, on my body, on myself. I just felt like labor was the Mount Everest for me. This peak of just that connection with my body and breathing through. So let's go into labor. My water actually broke. So my due date was May 9th. My water broke May 7th, so 2 days before. So in the morning, my water broke and I was sleeping 5 a.m., woke up. I knew my water had broke. It didn't, it wasn't like in the movies where it just, woof, water everywhere. It was just a gradual thing. And I went to the washroom, cleaned up myself, and yeah, my water had broke. Called my midwife. So I chose to have a midwife and a doula. I went the midwife route because of the type of care that we get in Canada with a midwife. It was much more hands-on, a little bit longer, and I prefer that delivery method. I also got a doula because during delivery, your midwife is mostly with the baby, and I wanted a little bit more support. And that's kind of where the doula came in, really supporting me because I knew I didn't want to have an epidural. So she helped me with massage and water and essential oils and all these things guiding me through contractions. We go back to 5 a.m. My water breaks. I call my midwife, let her know, and she said first thing, put a pad on because you're basically going to be leaking all day, which I didn't know. I thought you just leak once. And so I was leaking all day. And I actually had a midwife appointment that day. So she said, come in, we'll check you out. And unless you go into labor before, let's just keep your appointment. So my contractions started a little bit, but nothing serious. I wasn't going into active labor yet. And I didn't have, when I was timing the contractions, they weren't regular. And that's really what they go for. I go into my appointment at 12 and still nothing monumental. She said at that time, look, once your water breaks, there is a little bit of a stop clock. And maybe you'll disagree if you're listening to this, but this is what had happened to me at that time. And so she said, we really don't feel comfortable letting you go over 24 hours once your water is broken because of the risk of infection. So she said, if you still don't go into labor by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock today, I want you to come in for a stress test just so we can make sure that everything's good with you and baby. I was fine with that. 4 or 5 o'clock comes around, still not in full active labor. And we had a stress test. Everything was good. I still had contractions here and there, but again, nothing consistent. Her and my doula just told me, do everything that brings you joy today. We want to get the oxytocin going. We want to just let your body know that it's safe to go into labor because so much of labor is safety. I mean, again, life metaphor. And at the end of the day, though, I still felt like I didn't have enough time that day because I had my midwife appointment. Then I had to go and do the stress test, and I felt like I would have loved more time to allow my body to ease into labor. Now, by the time I went to sleep that night, still no active labor. I did have some contractions, but nothing too intense. I'll go to sleep, wake up at 1 a.m., full on contractions. Now, this was really cool because your body is so phenomenal. For me, once those contractions hit, my body also produced so many amazing chemicals to balance the quote unquote pain of contractions. I felt like I was high. I was literally sitting on my yoga ball, rolling around, and I have video of this. I need to release this and just saying to Mark, oh my goodness, Mark, I feel high. This is just so cool. So I'm just breathing through contractions and they started to pick up. However, they would be 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 18 minutes, and then 3 minutes. So still really irregular. And again, this wasn't good enough for my midwife. And so she said, if you don't go into consistent contractions by 9 a.m., we're still going to induce you. 9 a.m. rolls around, still no consistent contractions. They weren't sure why my water broke. Maybe Maverick was pushing and he kicked and broke my water. Who knows? And there was no room for him there. 9 a.m. rolls around. We ended up going to the hospital, which was different than our birth plan, right? I wanted to do an unmedicated at-home birth. And was I upset that I was going into hospital? No, but I was still a little overwhelmed by the process. It was intense because in so many of these courses, they would tell me, make sure you don't get induced or try not to get induced because once you get induced, contractions could be more intense and they can hurt more. And it might be the beginning the of the medication train. It might be harder to not have an epidural and so on and so forth. So I just wasn't sure what to expect and I felt a little overwhelmed. When I went into the hospital, I just burst into tears as soon as I saw my midwife and I was just scared. I didn't know it was my first little one. It was first labor and yeah, I was scared of the unknown. And the entire pregnancy journey, a lot of people talk about it being a surrender experience and leaning into the unknown, and it totally is. Now, for me, I had spent so much time moving through surrender for years that I didn't quite feel like the journey was leaning into surrender as much as some of my friends have mentioned. However, there was still that element of moving through surrender when, let's say, I didn't feel good enough to work because I was feeling a little bit lightheaded or nauseous or exhausted. And then same with labor when things don't necessarily go according to plan. How are you going to respond? What is that going to be like for you? And just letting go of all control. We go into the hospital 9:30 a.m. I was induced, and ooh, let me tell you, as soon as I was induced, those contractions came on a full throttle. Now, 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., I was in full-on contractions. 9 hours of contractions. And I would say that I was in a full meditative state the entire day. I was just breathing through each contraction, trying to release any tension in my body. And all of my pictures throughout that day that my doula took, my eyes were closed, just moving through. I did puke all day as well as I was moving through my contractions. A lot of people say that this is normal because as you're contracting, everything's kind of contracting in. Was I puking from the pain? I don't think so. I think I was puking from the intensity of the contraction because everything's just coming together, like I just said. But it was an interesting process, and they don't hate when you puke because apparently it moves things along. Now, I did dilate really well. I think the reason, and again, we'll never know, that my contractions lasted 9 hours was because Maverick, we realized, was kind of stuck. I was 10 centimeters and he still wasn't really, he was still stuck. I actually tried to push at 10 centimeters. Now, here's where that differentiation between needing to go versus gonna go in your pants I feel makes a difference because I needed to go at that point. And so I started pushing. I was 10 centimeters, started pushing, but I think I started pushing a little bit too early because he was stuck and it wasn't helping the process. We started pushing. He still wasn't coming. He was stuck because his head was was tilted sideways. They say this is asynclitic. At that point, I then had to go back into contractions. The reason I say that, and this might sound confusing, is because when you're doing contractions, you're in a relaxation state. Remember, you're moving through the contraction. When you're pushing, it's completely different. So there was no more pushing at this point because he was stuck. I had to go back into contractions. And this part for me was the hardest part during my entire labor. 9 hours in, needing to go back into contractions after trying to push and him being stuck just felt so defeating to me at the time. They ended up giving me some laughing gas to calm my mindset because that was the first time during the whole day that I thought, I can't do this. And I hear every woman has this during her labor and delivery that I can't do this. What am I going to do? And that was the moment for me. I don't know if I can do this. I've gone 9 hours, you know, getting this baby ready, and I did not go this long to get a C-section was my thought at that time. And if you need to have a C-section, that's totally cool. That is your journey. And if I needed to, sure. But at that time, that was the thought that was going through my mind. They gave me some laughing gas that helped wonderfully. I was able to get back into my zone. and just go. I waited a little bit longer, and then this is when I went into the, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go in my pants phase where I physically my body was going, like getting ready to get this baby ready because I wanted to breathe out this baby. And there's a difference between breathing out the baby and then purple pushing. Purple pushing is basically when you just hold your breath and push with all your might. And then breathing is when you move this baby out. And I had practiced that in my hypnobirthing as well as with my pelvic floor therapist. I wasn't able to breathe out the baby. Was it because Maverick was stuck? I'm not sure. Was it because of the guidance of my midwife? I don't know. But my midwife did encourage me to purple push. Now, you might agree, disagree. I still don't even know. Again, I'm not a medical professional, but his head was asynclitic. He was stuck. And then as I was pushing, he was bobbing in and out. He had shoulder dystocia, meaning his shoulder was caught. And so I was purple pushing the whole way. Now, at this point, this was very interesting because if people have an epidural, usually they don't normally feel it. You're all hooked up to these monitors, and the midwife or your doctor will tell you you're having a contraction, push. For me, I knew when it was coming, so I could feel it coming. I rounded up the whole team and I kept saying to them, all right, it's coming, let's go. Now, because Maverick was stuck, a couple factors happened here. I initially started pushing, standing up, squatting because I wanted gravity to just pull him out. Because he was stuck, I needed to go on my back, which I didn't love, but this is just what had to happen. Again, you kind of just roll with the punches. So I'm on my back, legs up, everybody just pulling my legs back, and my midwife's arm literally all the way up my body. Did I feel it and notice it at the time? No. It's amazing when you're giving birth, just what your body can do. And if you were to tell me right now, you have to go into the doctor tomorrow and someone's going to stick their arm all the way up you, I would lose it. But at the time, you just don't even care. You're like, get my baby out. I want him and me to be safe. And you just do whatever you need to do. So I'm purple pushing with all of my might. I literally popped all of the blood vessels in my eyes. I looked like a crazy person for a few weeks. A few weeks later, I went to go get my nails done at the salon, and this sweet Asian woman, she's like, "What happened to your eyes?" I said, "Oh, I gave birth." And she just laughed. So I had burst all the blood vessels in my eyes, and my eyes were so swollen. And we finally, Maverick and I get him out with the help of my midwife's arm all the way up me, and then the other midwife just pushing from the outside, trying to get this baby out. And he comes out, and it was just such a beautiful moment. I have a video of it, and I always get teary-eyed when I watch it. My doula took. And it was just so cool. My relief, but also I just kept saying, Maverick, we did it. We did it, Maverick, we did it. And it was just the coolest experience. You really feel like such a badass after you give birth. And I remember looking over to my midwife and my doula thinking, how the heck do women do this? Everybody does this. And they said at the time, you forget. And I mean, you really do. I forget. I'm almost ready to have another baby. It's just wild. He was born at 7:29, almost full 10 hours, and I literally felt like I ran a marathon. My body was shaking, and I gave it all I had. And because I was induced and was hooked up, I couldn't have any food or anything. So after we gave birth, it was late and we stayed in the hospital overnight. We ended up ordering pizza, and it was just such a sweet, peaceful moment. And it was just so cool to be with my baby. I would say the next 24 hours when we were in the hospital were probably the hardest because we just didn't want to be there, and we could have left, but because he was stuck and just some things that we were watching over the next over the next 24 hours. And I was happy that we ended up having the labor in a hospital. My midwife was super comfortable. We had a huge room, we had a single room, and we had everything we needed. We had a shower and just little things like I wasn't worried about getting blood anywhere because we were in the hospital. We also had the bed that raises, right? The hospital bed moves in all these different positions, and that was really helpful because he was stuck and on an angle. I basically stood the entire day through contractions, and when I initially started pushing, I was pushing standing up. And I don't know what I would have used if I was in my house because the bed was so sturdy. And like I said, you could put it at different heights. So that felt really good. My next child, I think I'll go without an epidural. And I don't know if I'll do at home or in hospital. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go with what feels right. But even throughout the process, if I needed to get an epidural, okay. But I wanted to just keep taking it one step at a time and feeling what felt best for me and my baby. And that's where throughout your entire life, I just encourage you to tune into what is right for you and make the best decision for you. No judgment either way. Just own your decision and know what's best for you and go with it. I know so many of my friends, maybe they wanted to go natural. They wanted to go unmedicated, but they felt pressured. And I'm just encouraging you to do what feels right for you, to tune in and stand up for what you believe, whether it's your birth plan or whatever, right? But it is that fine balance of giving up control while also standing up for yourself. And after I gave birth, even the midwives had said, well, that was really cool. And I thought to myself, what do you mean that was really cool? And they said they don't have unmedicated births very often. So it was just cool for them to experience that and for them to be with someone who was having an unmedicated birth. So that was my birth story. I wouldn't say it was traumatic. I felt like it was so beautiful, even though there were some hiccups along the way. We managed and we pulled through. I think one of the hardest parts for me was also that when he came out, maybe it was because his head was tilted. I hurt my tailbone so bad during delivery. And or maybe it was also because I had to be on my back. Again, there's so many unknowns here. And it probably took about 3 months for my tailbone to heal fully. I could not sit. And it was so uncomfortable for me to sit in the hospital bed on the way home. We have this picture of Mark wheeling me out of the hospital, me holding baby, and me just bawling because it was so painful just to sit in the wheelchair as they were wheeling me out to the car. And just sitting in the car was so uncomfortable, and breastfeeding at home. That was one of the hardest parts, but it's all part of the process and all part of the journey and things that you can laugh at after the fact. Let's go into postpartum. When recording this podcast, I am 9 months postpartum. So I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning. And I would say the first week was really about me learning about my baby, us just connecting skin on skin and learning how to breastfeed. Breastfeeding? Oh my goodness. This is what I feel like I wasn't prepared for. Breastfeeding is a thing. It is not just a thing, it is not for the faint of heart. It is a lot of work, a lot of effort. In the beginning, just figuring out how to breastfeed with your child. And then, even after the fact, I mean, it is a full-time job. We're 9 months postpartum. We are still breastfeeding. And at this point, I really enjoy it. I am home, so I'm able to breastfeed a little bit more than someone that has to go back to work. And I don't see myself stopping soon. I mean, who knows? I just keep taking it one step at a time. Maybe we'll just breastfeed morning and night. I don't know. But right now we're still breastfeeding. However, I also get it when people in the beginning just can't do it. It's just too much. I totally get it. And everybody's body is different. So whether you produce enough milk or you don't, I spent a lot of time trying to get my milk supply up, making sure I got enough milk. The first 2 weeks, we did have to supplement with formula. I wish I had formula at home in preparation prior to, because we ended up just having to go grab formula and it wasn't the best, but it is what it is. There's no shame in that. I just knew that I would rather my baby fed than not. And so the first couple weeks as we were figuring out, I did use formula, but as my milk came in, I think my milk came in on day 3, we figured it out, and he did have a tongue tie. His tongue basically looked like a heart. It was connected almost all the way to the end. So we got that snipped. I went to a lactation consultant, which was so helpful. I highly recommend it. And, we figured it out 1 week at a time. And even now, 9 months postpartum, every week is different. Babies evolve and change so much. And my main goal throughout this entire process has been to tune into me and tune into my baby and getting out of my own way, but keep following his cues. Keep paying attention to what does my son need? What is the next best step? What is he ready for? And for us, that's worked. And also knowing that he's just trying to communicate to me. When he cries, I actually say, "Thank you. You're such a good communicator," because he's trying to communicate with me in the only way that he knows how. And there's basically a list of things. When he cries or he's fussy, I just go through the list. What are the things that he could possibly be trying to tell me? Is he hungry? Does he need his diaper changed? Does he need to be held? Does he want to move? What does he need at this time? And I think that's with anything, right? Even adults, when we're fussy, what do they need? What are they trying to tell us? I remember somebody telling me everybody just wants love. Some people are just not the best at communicating that. And babies aren't the best at communicating that because they just cry. And so it's just figuring your baby out and what they're crying for and what that list is for you and your baby. And just being curious and leaning in that they're not trying to make it hard on you. They're just trying to talk to you. And it's a really cool process. It's also really fun to see what kind of mom I am. And, I got little snippets of what kind of mom I would be when I was younger because I taught swimming my entire life. So I just saw how I was with younger kids. Even in my mom passing away and caring for her in the last months of her life, I saw what kind of mom I would be. But now being a mom is just so fun. I love talking to him like he is an adult and just being really intentional about the words that I use with him, knowing that his internal dialogue is going to become how I speak to him right now. I take that job very seriously, wanting him to have a good internal dialogue that builds him up, that's productive, but also positive and allows him to be his most confident self without having all this extra doubt and fear because we all have it anyways, and I don't need to make it far harder for him. But I am definitely a crunchy mom. I I really pay attention to, like I said, what I say to him, but also his toys. I love Montessori toys and wooden toys and not too much stimulation. I also really pay attention to his food, which probably isn't a surprise considering I do that for myself, but really paying attention to what he's eating and seed oils and all of those things. But it's just so fun. I love being a crunchy mom. And obviously, at times you even contradict yourself because I'm not that way the entire time. I'm not perfect, but really just continuing how I was in my own self-development journey and bringing that into motherhood, right? Questioning everything, really tuning in. And who knows, maybe I will homeschool, but just questioning everything and just keep taking it one step at a time and doing what is best for me and baby. And that's kind of what we do this entire journey together. And that's why I think it's so hard when you see moms or just people judging other people for their journey because I just hope that everybody does what's right for them. And I know this is going to irk some people, but I don't think there's a right and wrong because everybody's doing what's right for them. And as long as you educate yourself on the differences and you get the information, then go with it and do what's right for you. I really enjoy being a mom, and I also don't even know what does it feel like to be a mom. I have no idea. People ask me, "Do I feel like a mom yet?" And I don't even know what that means. I'm 9 months postpartum and I have no idea what that means. I don't know that I feel like a mom. Maybe when he starts to move and talk to me, maybe then I'll feel like a mom, but I kind of just feel like me.
I'm just navigating my new life, and that kind of supports my word of the year was rebirth. And as I birthed a baby, I also feel like I birthed a new me, and I need to rebirth in this world and just continue to show up in this world as a different version of me. And now, as part of this podcast, you're here in this rebirth, seeing this new version of me, witnessing my growth. I know I'll have so many more things to talk about being a mom and postpartum, but it really is this journey of learning about the new me and also this new baby that I brought into this world. I look at him every single day and cannot believe I birthed this thing and that he came out of my vajayjay. But yeah, I am just amazed that I grew him, I birthed him, and now he's our child. There's this part of me that has had to mourn my old life and still misses parts of my old life. I loved my life, and that was something that my partner and I really thought about before having a baby. We loved our life. We loved our lifestyle. And I love my alone time, my independence. And I knew having a baby would change that. I also felt like I had really mastered my life before having a baby. And yeah, there's always challenges, but I say that in the way that I knew my triggers. I knew what I needed to take care of myself, and that changes so much. It changed so much for me when I had a baby because I don't get as much me time and I don't have as much time to work. And so, really figuring out how am I going to make this work for me and our family and my baby, that has definitely continued to be a journey. And that continues to change. Now as an entrepreneur, I work in the morning and during his naps, not usually at night because I'm not my best self at night, but that's how I make it work. And I'm trying to get up earlier and earlier now that we have a little bit more of a routine, but I know I need my space and time. I know I need to eat well. I know I need to move. That's how I continue to support myself to be my highest self so that I can show up for my baby and my partner and our family and my clients. And that's just really important for me. But like I said, it continues to evolve. So postpartum is definitely just such an interesting journey, but I still bring back the same concepts, my inner peace. Number one, taking care of myself and allowing myself to support myself to become my highest self. So important. And then also continuing to question everything. What do I need? Does my business still work for me? What do I want my business to look like? What do I want my life to look like? What kind of mom do I want to be?
And one other thing I need to mention is I would find the first couple weeks weren't easy. And the hardest thing for me in that time was that I felt like so I'm an introvert that kind of presents as an extrovert. I need a lot of alone time. I need my space. And the hardest thing was the people wanting to see us and see the baby. And I knew it was out of love, but your hormones are dipping.
I remember going to my first midwife appointment in person and her looking at me and asking me, "How are you?" And I just burst into tears. I'm like, I can't see anyone. I'm just so overwhelmed. I can't see anyone anymore.
I felt like I wanted privacy, and I totally get why people say we're not seeing anyone the first week, or they go to those retreat centers. There's these beautiful postpartum retreat centers that you go with baby, and you can stay there for as long as you want, basically. And they make food for you, they take care of you and baby, and that's beautiful. I actually thought about doing that with this baby and ended up deciding that I wasn't going to go that route, but maybe next time. Maybe I'll go to the postpartum retreat center and just have that beautiful peace and just privacy, I guess you could say. But then I also know that people get excited about the baby, and that's beautiful too. And I totally get it. There's so many options out there. It's just choosing what's right for you at that time. And every baby can look different. Every pregnancy is different, and every person is different. And there's going to be hard times, just like in life. This is a metaphor for life because there's going to be hard times, but hard times does not have to mean that the entire experience has to be hard and that the entire experience has to be bad. Yes, we have challenges. We have challenges every week, but I would still tell you that my my getting pregnant, my pregnancy, my labor, and my postpartum has been seamless. Why? Because that's how I choose to perceive the experience. And I believe that who you are is shown when you see how you move through hard situations. How do you move through challenges? You can move through challenges gracefully and peacefully and still have challenge, right? I talk about this all the time, and I'm going to keep preaching it because you can have a beautiful pregnancy, labor, and postpartum experience. I really have enjoyed this entire process, even though we're still trying to figure it out. I hope that in sharing this, it gives you a little bit more information, but also permission to do it in your own way. We are older parents, and I got pregnant when I was 38 and had a baby when I was 38. If I have a second, I'm not going to have a second until I'm what? 39, 40. And it's okay. For me, that was the right thing for us. But I didn't even mind when I would be called a geriatric mom because I've always actually loved being older. I love being older because of the wisdom, because of who I am in the process. And I know for me, I'm a better mom, but everybody has to make the best decision for them. And that just felt right for us being older parents. And it's just a really cool process that if you're going through it, I get it. I'm here for you, mama. And if you're not and you've chosen a different route, that's okay too. I'm still cheering you on. So that is my pregnancy, labor, postpartum story in a nutshell. And I will continue to keep you updated. Please do let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next episode.
That's all for today. Until next time, trust yourself, shine your light, and stay true to your heart and mind. Love you.